Iran is projecting victory. The United States is sending an armada of massive power into this region and saying that the strike will be heavier than anything that the Ayatollah regime have ever seen. Are we heading towards a diplomatic solution or to a regional war that will involve Israel, the proxies of Iran, the United States, its allies, and the Gulf states? Today we're going to answer the question, what's happening in this region with Iran, the United States, the massive buildup of the U.S. Army that is coming right here to our neighborhood? Or is it going to be just a bluff and then we're going to have a diplomatic solution to all of this? Mati, what do you think about that? Just 1 second before we start.
Well, I think the first question is, what is an armada?
Yeah.
and how is an armada different than a fleet? We were talking about this before.
I think it's something from Pirates of the Caribbean.
I think it's the word in Spanish. but someone's going to correct me. I'm an admiral in the Navy.
We call it armada, yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of people on the ground. A huge amount of forces that the U.S. has amassed here. We were joking about this before we started recording. We have pretty much anything with an engine and wings, or anything with a hull and an engine, has shipped or flown to this region from the U.S. An unbelievable amount of aircraft. Mm-hmm. Now we're talking about spy planes. We're talking about electronic warfare. We're talking about bombers. We're talking about close to 100 refueling vessels in the air. A very important element of their resupply chain. Mm-hmm. We're talking about the logistics, the manpower, the tanks, the missiles, the submarines. Everyone is here. And they weren't joking when they said we're amassing all the forces needed on the ground. Everyone is truly here. And not only that, I've heard rumors saying that this is more than what was used, as far as weaponry, not manpower, in the invasion of Iraq.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The second invasion. A very, very substantial amount of forces, a huge amount of people here. And everyone here is sort of sitting at the edge of their seat, waiting to see what actually happens.
Exactly.
That's where we are.
Definitely. So guys, welcome to TBN Israel, the podcast. I'm Yair Pinto. This is Mati Shoshani. Thank you to all the people that join us from all over the world to the studio in person. If you want to come and visit us, make sure to just leave a comment when you're here in Jerusalem. Visit us. Let's have coffee together. Thanks, Tomer, for everything that you do. And thanks to the team. Let's begin. First question to you, Mati. Bluff?
When is the strike happening?
Or a strike for real?
So the joke that's running right now is the strike will be happening tonight. Which night? Any night. How do you know this? I heard a guy on the train who said he had a friend in the DOD who said that his sister is the sister of, and the list goes on.
Yeah. We have so many of these things. Like I have a friend that got a phone call from somebody who works for the U.S. Department, and they told him to move from the office here to office in a different state, and that means that the strike is happening now. All kinds of rumors like that.
Yeah, and then people say there's a travel ban to Israel. Not really.
It's happening.
Not really. There are tourists. There are tourists in the country right now. There's just this
here in the studio with us.
Yeah. So in fact, there is no travel ban. People are traveling to the country. There's a travel warning of, and I'll summarize many, many words into one. We don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but we do know is that there are massive amounts of power and military forces coming. We have aircraft carriers, which are basically floating islands with military forces on them. We have vessels that can launch rockets from the sea. We have planes. We have refueling planes. We have transport planes. We have so much power in this region, then what's the point to bring it here if you don't want to use it?
Yeah. So let's summarize how we got to this moment. Mm-hmm. The Iranian regime is more destabilized now than it's been in many, many years. They've reacted in more violence, and we'll break that down in a second, than they have in decades against their own population. They've been threatening the neighborhood to an extreme degree, to the point that Saudi Arabia and the Emirates are very, very hesitant to cooperate with the United States.
They don't allow him.
Yeah, they're very fearful of it.
To attack cross from their own...
I was trying to summarize, Toma.
Yeah, sorry.
Toma is the Zoom destroyer. He cannot be quiet for like a full minute.
We'll get to the details in a second. So we have all those things happening. Israel's on high alert, obviously. The United States amasses all the forces here. And now we're at the make or break moment. And that moment can stretch out. And I want to be honest here. Anyone here who tells you or goes online and says the attack's happening today, they don't know what they're talking about, because no one knows if the attack is happening today.
Exactly.
We know everything has been shifted. Everything is is shaken. And then you wait to see how things fall. And someone might say there will be no strike, and the Iranians last minute will capitulate to everything that the Americans have demanded of them, and there'll be a regime change. They'll say, you see, no, we didn't know until the moment that happened, and the government changed over there. The other could happen. There could be a strike any moment, and we wouldn't know because it literally depends on the whim of a single individual. His name is Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, who could wake up one morning and say, okay, come on, we've been talking about this enough. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get on to the next thing. There's the Super Bowl coming up. But also, there is this very sophisticated AI that is calculating all the variables of an incoming strike and projects what happens, except for one variable that is very important, which is what goes on in Donald Trump's mind. That's the only thing that the AI cannot
how do you put a
project.
metric on that?
Exactly.
I wanted to pull it up. Let's see what the number is today.
No, so and everything is in the table here. Everything is here except for one decision to do it. And I think that the reasons for not striking are also very substantial. So let's break it down a little bit. You have one reason, which is the pressure from the Gulf states that are allies of the United States, Qatar, the UAE, United Arab Emirates, and you have Saudi Arabia, that they don't want this region to be destabilized because their economy will be hurted severely, will be harmed severely, and they are within the distance of the medium, short-range missiles and even the vessels of Iran. So they are afraid of the direct repercussion of an attack.
Absolutely.
Like physically, they are afraid. So they stated, we will not allow the U.S. to use our airspace. We will not allow our U.S. to use our land. We will not allow the U.S. to use our seaport and international waters to carry out any kind of attack.
Yeah.
So they are like pushing for a diplomatic solution. You also have Turkey that is pressuring for a diplomatic solution because they have a big, long border with Iran, and they are fearing millions of immigrants and refugees that will flee Iran into Turkey, and they don't want that. So they are building a wall, barricaded all the border with soldiers in order to prevent the spillover of refugees in case of an attack. And at the same time, they are warning the U.S., do not attack Iran because the Iranians are basically serious and they can project and really harm you. So these are a few elements. And then there is the internal.
A lot of moving pieces when you think about it.
A lot. There is also another very, very important element that the U.S. is afraid to carry out a strike now because the protests have been quieted, suppressed violently by the regime. And if you open a front, maybe the regime can use that time to crack down on all the opposition brutally from within, while the whole world is looking at the aerial fights, at the big, displays of firepower between Iran and the U.S. So that can kind of destroy the option of a revolution that comes from within Iran. And then the U.S. will be stuck with a country.
Let's break that down for a minute. Here are the numbers that are unofficial. We know that in Iran, the numbers go somewhere between 20 to 40,000 by the regime. And
unalived.
Yeah.
That's the number.
That's a term. And when you look at it, some of those, a very large number, happen within 24 hours.
48,
A two-day period where the regime essentially said, shut down the internet. What was it, the 7th and the 8th?
Yeah.
Right? 7th and the 8th of the month. The regime said they shut down the internet and they told their forces, do whatever you need to stop the demonstrations. And
they burned them alive in one of the bazaars.
I mean, they were firing automatic weapons into crowds of people in a street. They were, again, horrendous actions, plus mass arrests of people and torturing of individuals and follow-up.
Who was killing them?
Who was killing them? It's mercenaries that come from outside of the region. And you need to understand
hezbollah,
this. But not just that. Iran is not one single ethnicity. They bring in people from different parts of the country that are ethnic minorities or not indigenous to that part of the country to use violence against others. And the U.S. government warned the Iranians, and they said several times, if you keep killing your population, we will come after you. And I want to be honest here. They didn't. They didn't stop the murder of the population. They didn't stop the violence against the population. The regime, they were blacked out almost 100% for, well, it's been several weeks at this point. And they just shut off the internet completely, assumed that some of the footage would leak. They arrest and execute people who are leaking footage of what's been happening inside of Iran, including doctors who are aiding people, and then release the videos. And you have images, and I'm going to have to be careful how I say this, of morgues that are full, of trucks that are piled high with people that were removed from those demonstrations, fill in the blanks because of the YouTube algorithm. Horrific actions, and the U.S. and the world stood by as this was taking place, as did, by the way, their neighbors, because of what you said, Yair. Because we don't know what's going to happen afterwards. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, and the Saudis and the Emiratis might hate and fear the Iranian regime at the moment, the Islamic regime of Iran, but they don't know what's going to come next.
Yeah.
And that's a big factor that people need to take into consideration.
Exactly. And I think people don't understand also that when we hear all the U.S. forces moving to this region, there is also a mobilization on the other side. The Iranians are preparing. Their proxies are also gathering up, if it's Hezbollah, if it's Iranian militias in Iraq, that more and more people are joining and stating clearly that they will fight the U.S. and the West against any attack against the Iranians.
Yeah.
There are the Houthis in Yemen that are also preparing. So both sides are arming up. So this is a very, very volatile situation that every miscalculation, it can be even a small militia in Iraq that is affiliated with the Iranians that accidentally presses the button because they heard something wrong in the radio, and then boom, everything ignites in this region.
Yeah. And it also might go the other way, which is something we need to take into account.
Can we look on what's happening right now? Who is, like, you hear those threats coming out from the U.S., a lot of threats. And on the other side, the Iranian regime said just yesterday, we're going to attack the middle of Tel Aviv.
They already did.
They did once with 2 missiles.
No,
one in Bat Yam, one in
there were several
Weizmann.
that hit. No, Toma, come on.
Yeah.
They launched the 500.
They launched hundreds of missiles. Some of them some of them had empty warheads. We know that. Some of them weren't really accurate, and some of them were accurate. And they hit quite a few targets within Israel. And Israel overcame it. And we were resilient, and thank God, our air defenses are, I don't want to say they're impenetrable, but they're the best in the world. And it is what it is at this point. Now, Israel's not backing down from this conflict. On the contrary, we've said publicly multiple times, if Iran instigates any kind of violence, we're going to respond to it strongly. But going back to the premise of this whole question, which is where is this all going? And I want to say this in the most clear way possible. We don't know. There's so much. You were listing the list, you could literally take a nap, come back, and you'd still be going through the list of the regional conflicts that are behind this one big move. It's a lot that's happening at the same time, and it makes it very volatile. It makes it very, very complex. And it also ties in a huge amount of relationships. And everyone's trying to figure out, how do we walk out of this with a regime change in Iran, but without dragging the entire region back into a war? That's really the big question.
Yeah. Did you see the AI images that Iran created in order to scare the Americans off?
Yeah.
They created this massive aircraft carrier of drones that is using AI, and they, illustrated a missile attack against the Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier of the U.S., like exploding them, and then red in the water, like blood behind it. And they put all these pictures all over the place in Iran so that the people will have like courage to know that they are in control and that they're not afraid, allegedly. And also that the U.S. will think that, they're not prepared of them and they will sustain casualties. So this is like, to me, it seems like when a dog is barking, he's not biting.
It's not really true. I found out in life.
It bites.
I've been bit.
He's barking. Don't worry.
I've been bit by dogs who are barking. I can tell you that's not necessarily true.
Okay. Yeah, it's also like you can have smoke without fire. That's also true.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know where these things came from.
And you can have fire without smoke too.
Gas in the house when you cook.
Yeah.
That's true. We learned something new.
A lot of these expressions are not true, I found over the years.
Also, like it's raining cats and dogs. What's all about that?
I don't know.
But I think we're diverting from the topic.
That must be a Dutch expression, I have to tell you. It sounds like...
Yeah, I never got that.
Anyway, getting back to our point. So we talked about what's happening in Iran. Iran and I say this in the saddest way possible, they horrifically stopped the demonstrations in the streets. And they've been on an extreme propaganda campaign since then to try and reshape the narrative about what's happening. All of that attention goes to saying, who's to blame for everything that's happening in Iran? Israel. Who's to blame for everything happening in Iran? The U.S. Everyone in Iran apparently is a Mossad or a CIA agent. Apparently, out of the hundreds of thousands or possibly millions of people who demonstrated, according to the Iranian regime, not a single one of them did it without being paid by Israel or the U.S.
Yeah, right.
That's what they claim.
That's insane. And more than that, they don't just claim it. They put these people on the stand and videograph them and make them like state. Confess that they are members of the Mossad, members of the CIA, members of MI6, and members of spy agencies of the West. Doesn't make sense.
No, I mean, they're a terrorist regime. It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
What terrorism does is it puts fear in the hearts of people, and what they're doing is they're publicly torturing and publicly punishing individuals in Iranian society. So everyone else who watches it, because they do have access to that media, knows what happens when you go against the regime. And they know their neighbors and their friends who disappeared during the demonstrations and never came back. They know of the people who were shot. They know of the people who were imprisoned. They know of the people who were arrested in the middle of the night. They know about all of this. And they're not sure where it's going. They thought, I think there was a moment of hope there, and the pressure that came down from the government was so extreme. And I need to tell this to people who haven't been following the news as far as like the visuals of it go. Let me paint you a picture. You had hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating, and then you saw, I mean, literally hordes of IRGC and Basij individuals coming in with machine guns, with armored vehicles, with just countless vehicles, and they're using open fire against that population. And they're arresting people and they're beating people in the streets. They've turned the cities into military bases. They've recruited everyone in their army, and it's a very substantial fighting force. And they've taken over school compounds and turned them into military bases. And you'll just see, it's just piles and piles of vehicles and motorcycles and everything that they have at their disposal to stop the demonstrations. The United States and Israel and the West were not able to stop it. I want to be honest about that. And now they're saying, so that was the premise for this whole strike. But there's a backstory here, which leading into this moment was the fact that Iran, after Operation Rising Lion and Midnight Hammer back in June, they still refuse to stop with the acts of violence. They continue to try to be an exporter of terrorism. They continue to try to at least talk about rebuilding their nuclear non-civilian program, which they refuse to claim is military. And they do it again and again. And we're again at that boiling point that we were back in June, exactly the same point, which is, are you going to continue being the troublemaker of the Middle East, or are you going to change? And the Bible tells us, says, will a tiger change its spots, or I don't know, what does it say in English in the Bible?
Yeah,
a leopard.
A leopard.
A leopard?
Will flip his
spots.
Anyway,
they are what they are. The Iranian regime is it is what it is.
That was the new Tomer version of the Bible, right?
Yeah. Maybe I will get another pillow.
Close to the King James version. Right. Yeah, definitely, Mati. So the question here is, we have a few theories. One of them is that Trump is genuinely chasing a deal, a diplomatic solution, and this is all just, pressure economically and military pressure on Iran to sign a deal. And then the other option is to offer them a deal that they cannot sign, and then to have a reason to carry out an attack. And that's why he's building up the forces, and that's why he's increasing the pressure every single day that passes.
I don't know. I think the Trump White House is sincere in its desire for an agreement. The Iranian regime has been sincere.
What's this agreement? Maybe we can understand.
Well, if we
good?
It will be a nuclear. They will not allow to use proxies anymore, and they will need to balance their ballistic missile range to a limited amount. That's the three big stuff we have on the table as a deal.
Also, they will need to keep ballistic missiles only for peaceful purposes, right?
Yeah. What do you do with a ballistic missile that's for peace?
It's deliveries of packages.
Continental deliveries.
It's part of Amazon's new 1 hour program.
Yeah, right? Order and you get it from China, from Iran.
You get a sofa within an hour, but it falls through your roof.
I have kind of feels like exactly before Midnight Hammer, when Trump came with a deal that that this kind of regime will never take. And I felt back then that it was a distraction before having a surprise attack over Iran.
No, but let's delay on what you're saying, because it's not a negotiation tactic. I want to be fair about this. The Trump White House isn't saying, here's a deal that we know is unfair. What they're saying is, please behave like every other legitimate country in the world. That's what the deal is. Don't use your weaponry to export terrorism. Oh no, what a demanding challenge. How could we ever do this? Don't spend all your GDP on killing people outside of your country. It's like these obvious statements that should be obvious to any country, to the Islamic Revolutionary Iranian regime. It's what? That's our core behavior.
That's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
We're here to export radical Islamic ideology all over the place.
Yeah, so they could. It's not like, again, he's just being very direct and he's being very real. And he's saying...
Also them.
Yeah.
Also them.
Well,
Yeah, they said, we cannot change our system and we will not get a deal under military pressure.
Mm-hmm.
They're not accepting any kind of threats or anything.
Okay, but let's make this simple. Every time that Iran has entered into negotiation in the last 15 years, they have outsmarted and outweighted every other Western country that they negotiated with, at the end of which they always have more nuclear capability for military purposes.
That's true.
And less sanctions.
Less sanctions, less supervision, and more violence for their population.
Only under Trump.
Yeah, and the Trump White House looks at this and says, why on earth would we repeat this pattern again? It doesn't make any sense.
Here, just Macron today accepted to be one of the countries, like France, going to be one of the countries that claim that the IRGC are a terror organization. But a day before that, he said, no, they still a legitimate regime that controlling this country.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you zoom out, you realize that the majority of countries in the world, they might not be as extreme or as evil as the Iranian regime, but they're not voted for democratically. That's the majority of countries in the world, including some Western countries, don't really have real elections. So to say, well, we only have diplomatic relations with countries who are exactly this way, it'd be a very small club. You have to work with other people. Our partners in the Middle East don't have, they don't have elections.
Yeah.
They don't have a government that
Ben
switches.
Salman,
they're monarchies at best, and they're dictatorships on a bad day. So it's not extreme. It's a question of what are their actions. The Iranian regime could have said, we want to do a series of reforms. The problem is they're so corrupt and evil internally that they can't give up the power. The same applies to the Putin regime. The same applies, by the way, to a certain degree also to the Turkish Erdogan government.
Or to Hamas in the Gaza Strip, what's happening now.
But they've taken over everything. They're not just radical. They're also a kleptocracy. They're a government that steals from its people, and they've stolen everything that can be stolen. And when power is shifted, they're now on the executioner's block. And the reason is because they've destroyed their own country. Anyone who takes power after them looks at the rubble that they left behind and said, let's punish these people. So they don't want to give up the power. And those are the people who are fighting on the ground in Iran. They're that, I don't know what the number is. They say it's 15 to 20% of the population who one way or another is or supportive or connected financially or professionally or relationally to the government and doesn't want it to be replaced. So it's tricky. It's a very, very tricky situation. And we're looking to go after what you were talking about earlier, Yair. The regional play is very, very, very tenuous right now. You look at the Saudis. You look at
tenuous is like tense.
The metach, again, it's tense. You look at the Emiratis, the Saudis, any other country in this region, and the U.S. probably approached them in back channels and said, "Hey, we want to park 80 aircraft in your country and 5,000 soldiers and 1,000 shipping containers full of equipment, et cetera, et cetera." And they said no. And they said no because they said, look, we already have trouble with the Iranians. They've already disrupted our economy. They're already fighting a proxy warfare against us. They already used drones through the Houthis to launch attacks against our oil fields. And the list goes on and on and on and on. And they say, we can't afford for them to win. And if they win, if they're on the upper hand when this ends, and we're on the, not we, their people are on the losing side, and the U.S. doesn't fully change the regime. Now we have to deal with a neighbor who has nothing to lose and wants to take vengeance against us. And they don't want to participate in that. They're very concerned.
Yeah, plus the Iranians have a very, very big fleet in the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
And they are threatening to block this strait. This strait, for those of you who do not understand, it is transporting 20% of the national oil and gas are coming out of this strait. So that affects the global economy significantly. And that's something that they do not want, the Gulf states, because that's their major income. And this is the source that they're making their money from.
Yeah.
That's it. Like from natural gas, from oil. Basically, that's it. They don't have any other big stuff that generates
that's
income.
really that's a challenge with the world that we're living in right now, where the warfare is very much kinetic in its nature, as Americans like to say, which is essentially it's the tactical weaponry that really decides on the map of the battlefield. And in the past, you could negotiate with a block of countries. You could negotiate in the Cold War with the Soviets. You could negotiate with a union of countries. Here it's the Iranians, and they semi-control those proxies, and it really doesn't take much to disrupt trade. All it takes is like 2 speedboats with like a couple dozen, hardened terrorists, and they go and they blow up on top of some oil tanker that the Saudis carry, and literally around the world, oil prices shoot up.
And then the Iranians have the ability to say, "This is not us. Yeah. These are ISIS terrorists." Like the attack that took place against the Jewish Hanukkah celebrations in Australia.
Yes.
That was carried by ISIS, but it was also supported by Iranians. And then the Iranian regime can say, "No, it's not us. It's ISIS terrorists." But we trained them, fund them, and they gave them the weapons and the know-how.
And radicalized them.
Yeah.
And asked them to do it. But it wasn't us.
But it wasn't us. Yeah, you see, they had a flag.
Different flag.
Yeah, different kind of flag.
Slightly. We hate you for a slightly different reason. That's what it says on the flag.
Yeah, Mati, and we've been to the northern border between Israel, Lebanon, and Syria just this week with our team. First of all, it was cold because it was the Hermon mountain, and we have one mountain in Israel that has snow sometimes of the year. So I got my face burnt because of all the reflections from the snow. So if I'm a bit red, it's because of that. And we talked to the soldiers that are stationed there, and they are preparing for war against elements of terrorism from Syria, from Palestinian terrorist groups that are still operating in Syria, from ISIS groups that were released from prison cells in Syria because of the situation between the Kurds and the al-Jurani regime, and also between Hezbollah, the terrorist organization that is the biggest proxy of Iran in Lebanon, that has been rebuilding itself despite the fact that the Lebanese national government stated that the southern Lebanon part is disarmed of weapons. And this is a very, 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 very tense situation for us. Even if they are weakened significantly compared to last time, they still have thousands of missiles. They still have terrorist warriors. They can still try to invade the northern part of Israel. And that's why many Israelis cannot go back to their communities up north.
Well, most of them have gone back to their homes, the ones that wanted to.
Well, if they have the homes standing.
If there is a home, yeah.
Exactly.
But I'd say yes, your point is very, very true, which is the instability is the big problem, which is everything is fine for now.
Yeah, but it can change like this.
Exactly. Everything is stable today. And it doesn't take an invasion. It's probably not going to be an army that tries to invade Israel.
It can be a mortar.
It can be, exactly. It could be a barrage of mortars, a barrage of cheap rockets that someone manufactured in their garage in Hezbollah or Syria, or that were smuggled from Iran through Iraq into the Syrian desert or something like that. It doesn't take much to destabilize the region. And it doesn't take much to have like an event that sort of ripples into something much bigger in the area. And what we've seen is that the Iranians are trying to do that in Israel. If you follow Israeli news, and we do, you follow Israeli news, you realize that the war we're fighting right now is not just an export war. It's not just a war taking place against Iran or against the Houthis. It's taking place in Israel and on the borders of Israel. There are attempts by various terrorist groups to sort of get a foothold again in Judea and Samaria, to get a foothold again in let's call it the smuggling institution in and out of the country. They're trying to resupply Gaza with weapons once again. Now they're using drones instead of the tunnels that were somehow existing under the eye of the Egyptian government. Wink, wink, because it wasn't somehow they were complicit in it for multiple reasons. You have that on the Egyptian border. You have issues in Jordan. The whole area is under this wave of influence that's trying to destabilize, that's trying once again to cause trouble and mayhem. And Israel, if you sort of visualize it, we're like this person that's trying to like pull all these different strings at the same time and keep everything balanced at the same time and go back to life while we're doing this, while we have soldiers in Syria and Lebanon, and we've massed up forces throughout Judea and Samaria and on our borders. Mm-hmm. It's all happening at the same time. So Iran's not limited to the regional conflict with the U.S. they're trying to destabilize also in multiple other fronts. They're trying to carry out terrorist attacks against Israel-related or Jewish-related targets around the world, against American targets around the world. So it's not a limited effort. It's a global effort of terrorism and instability that they're trying to pursue. And this fight that we're fighting right now, this tension with the United States, if Tomer asked the question, it was like, what is the deal? The deal is stop.
What is?
That is the deal. Stop doing that. People don't understand. It's like behind, they think it's like a conspiracy theory. Behind all these unknown lone gunman attacks, behind the car attacks in Christmas markets in Europe, behind the terrorism that's taking foothold in Latin America and Central America and trying to take place even in areas in the United States, someone behind all of that is radicalizing. Someone is funding. Someone is building the mosques and the schools that radicalize the young Muslim population that might not even speak Arabic at that point. Someone's behind all of that and exporting that to destabilize and to weaken. That's the war we're fighting right now. It's far greater than will the U.S. strike in Iran or will it not strike in Iran.
No, exactly. It's a lot bigger than that. And also, if they do strike, there is the issue of dealing with the proxies.
Yes.
Because they all operate independently. They get funding from the Iranian regime, but it's an ideology that they are pursuing, this, hatred.
Yes.
So, but something a bit more lighter, Mati. I see that you have a very nice shirt, but my shirt is a lot nicer than yours,
Yes.
as you can see. See the boots on the ground shirt, guys and ladies. So if you want to get your shirt of boots on the ground or any kind of merchandise from TBN Israel, we launched a shop, an online shop. You can go and visit it at shop.tbnisrael.com. And that's a great way, one, to stand with Israel, two, to get attention and then to have a conversation with your neighbor. And then you can maybe teach him something new, share the truth, help us reach more people, and in practical, help us create more content by purchasing cool stuff on our shop. We have hats.
It's important to note that it's not specifically the shirt that Yair is wearing,
No, yeah.
but a brand new shirt that you can buy and choose on your own.
Exactly. It's specifically made for you, not rewrapped after I use it. And we have hats. We have all kinds of different designs. We have sweatshirts. And we have Bible covers.
Where do they find this?
At shop.tbnisrael.com. Okay, you can also go to our website, tbnisrael.com, but directly shop.tbnisrael.com.
I have a request.
Yes.
It would really, really, really make us happy if someone ordered merch on that show and sent us pictures of it in the comments or to our info.
That would be great.
That would be really amazing.
That would be amazing.
Exactly.
We love interacting with the people that watch these shows and the content. Send us some pictures of you and your family in the merch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually met some people that wore the merch here.
Yeah.
Some of them bought I planted a tree in Israel, which is related to our Rebuild Israel campaign. So anyway, it's just nice to see that people care about us, about Israel, and make a stand about it. Because if you're not speaking, you're not making a stand, you're helping those that do.
I really want to take us back to the octopus arm of Iran, the regional proxies, and the possibility of attacking us, if it's the Houthis or if it's Hezbollah. And I feel that everybody think or around the world by the comments that we get that Hezbollah is gone.
Segev is always calling me while I'm on live or in a program. Segev is our VP content, always.
I'm familiar with the problem.
Yeah, right.
It was him and one other team member. I said, I'm taking them out of my favorites on the phone.
So it doesn't...
the notification doesn't come on.
Oh, it does that?
Yeah.
Cool, didn't know that.
Because if you do not disturb on your phone...
And then the favorites still come on.
But the favorites still come through.
Gotcha.
Exactly like Hezbollah and the Houthis with Iran.
So no matter what you do, they still pop up again? That's it?
Yeah, every time Iran is calling...
The Houthis and Hezbollah come.
What is that game called? The Whack-A-Mole? Whack-A-Mole?
Yeah.
Whack-A-Mole.
Oh, they come up, then you hit them?
They come up, but every time it's someone else.
Yeah.
It's a new guy. Look, I'm the new head of Hezbollah.
Yeah.
And it's bang. Look, I'm the new head of Hezbollah. Look, I'm the new something Houthis.
So Israel and the US attacked the Houthis many times with heavy forces.
But no ground forces. I think that's the key. So we only launch aerial attacks against the Houthis using drones and aerial strikes.
But right now they really talking about attacking on ground getting into Israel from land. We hear that Hezbollah said we are all in, fully armed. We know that they have still a big arsenal of weapons.
Yeah.
How do you think we as Israel gonna act to that? Do we gonna immediately attack, prevent those proxies to attack us?
Well, I think this is happening on multiple layers. On the close layer of defensive borders, we have troops defending all of our borders.
Yeah.
If it's the borders between Israel and Egypt that have become very, very hot, nobody's talking about that. There are massive amounts of smuggling attempts and actual smuggling and smugglers coming into Israel from this border, meaning the Egyptians in the Sinai Peninsula are using drones in order to transport the goods into Israel, and then they have people in Israel, smugglers, that are taking the goods and trying to get them into the various terrorist or criminal elements.
You know how we know
Gaza,
this?
especially.
You know how we know this in Israel? There's a metric, which is what is the cost of illegal weapons in the black market. And that cost dropped by a factor of 8 since before October 7th, 2023. It used to be the cost of, let's say,
M16.
an M4, an M16, an AK-47 would be 60, 70, 80, 90,000 shekels. So let's say 20, 25K US to get one. It dropped so low now.
It was like 2,000?
No, it's like 8 to 10,000 shekels for an illegal weapon.
Like an iPhone, basically.
Yeah, like a little more than buying an iPhone.
Yeah.
That's how full the market is of illegal weapons. And it's drones, and it's over the land bridge through Jordan, and things that came through the Gaza Strip, you know, in the first days of the war, and the list goes on and on and on. There's a huge problem where, and again, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. Terrorism elements that are funded externally are trying to obtain weapons, and they can. Because if you have money, you can get a weapon in any place in the world, including countries that don't have a free market for weapons. Israel is no different than that. So they're equipped, they have stashes of ammunition, they have stashes of weapons, and there's always that threat of what are they going to do with it? When are they going to pull the trigger against the civilian population in Israel? And I want to tell you, I'm currently in reserves. In the IDF, we continue to have to carry out operations to find those stashes of weapons and the people that want to use them on a regular basis. It's this never-ending cycle where you clean house one time, and 12 months later, they found another way to smuggle in weapons, and they've re-equipped again, time and time again. Yeah. It's a very difficult situation.
And more than that, Tomer, we had multiple reports that have been silenced lately about the diplomatic recognition of Somaliland. So Somaliland is this African country that is on the other side of the Houthis. You have like I think it's the Red Sea between them. And then from that place, Israel can act and see and receive intelligence and intercept all the Houthi piracy attempts, rocket launchers, and can be closer in range to any kind of Houthi retaliation against Israel. So that might be another option that is brewing in the back end, but nobody's talking about now because everybody's talking about the armada of Trump moving towards Iran.
Yeah, but the problem is both of them are true.
Yes.
That's really the challenge. You know, you could have as many forces as you want, but if your enemy is using, you know, rubber boats with an engine or small fishing boats with a vessel, or they have an arsenal of weapons, you always can sort of devolve to the lowest level of warfare.
Exactly.
That's really the sort of the tension here, which is it's unless you really eliminate the core issue, and the core issue goes all the way back to Tehran, all the way back to, you know, to the Ayatollah regime, which is a mass exporter of violence under the guise of Islam, of radical Islam. That's what it is. It's under the guise of radical Islam. They're exporting terrorism time and time again, and they're sending money with it and training. I want to tell people who are watching this, behind almost every terrorist attack that takes place in Israel, you find the blueprint and the fingerprints of the Iranian regime in telegram groups, in instructions, in cryptocurrency money that they're sending to people that are involved in it, in weapons, in networks that they build up. There's always a footprint behind it, but not just here. Also internationally, the same applies. Also in Europe, also in the United States, behind what people mistakenly call grassroots terrorism or lone wolf attacks, there's always a network behind it. A radicalizing network, an enabling network, a network that gives the training, the infrastructure, the thought process of how to carry out these attacks. It is always there. It is always there. It always wears the same nature. It's always from one religion group against other religion groups or its own religion group, time and time again. And what's happening here, and I think we should sort of take this towards what's happening next in the Middle East. What's happening here is a battle against the mass exporter of terrorism, which is the Iranian Islamic regime. That's the battle that's taking place. They're behind a lot of the trouble, a lot of the difficulty that's been existing in this region. And the United States is taking a bold stand against it and saying, you either fold or we're coming for you. You either fold and we're coming for you. Mm-hmm. And in that meantime, they've amassed an enormous amount of manpower, of logistics, of weaponry in this region, all with the purpose of making sure that that doesn't happen, that Iran doesn't get to continue exporting terrorism time and time again.
And
that's where we are
cheap
today.
Oil.
Yes.
Tomer, I think you didn't say anything about subscribing, sharing. You're not with us today.
I can't move much. My neck is stiff. So
because we drove to the north and Tomer was asleep the whole way, like this. So that's his excuse,
So I'm in pain. It's super important to help us spread the truth and tell about what's happening in Israel, because we are under an attack of
anti-truth, anti-Israel, anti-Bible, anti-Western thought. Yes.
Anti-Jew, anti-everything.
A huge wave in proper news and that's lying about what's happening here in the Middle East and about what the Jewish people or Israel is doing. And we need to fight that, and we fight it with the truth. And with you guys, if you share our content, that's super helping us. And especially if you're subscribing to our channel, that's the best we can ask from you to do. So
let me give an example of why this is important. What we do is we try to create a balanced report of what happens around the world. Here's an imbalanced example. We just marked the International Holocaust Day. The Holocaust Day marks the Holocaust of the Jewish people at the hands of the Nazi regime. Of the Nazi regime. BBC, CNN, several other networks, they mention that today is the International Holocaust Day. A Holocaust that happened to who?
6 million people.
Yeah.
That's what they said. Not 6 million Jews, 6 million people. And they say that in all the news outlet in the same day. What means 12 different reporters stand and say the same sentence without the Jews in it.
Yes, exactly. And that's an example of how the media lies and how the media bias sort of prevails around the world. Mm-hmm. They're not saying that it didn't happen. They're just telling a partial story. What a terrible day. Such terrible violence. Well, who are you talking about? Well, things in Iran, of course. I know the violence is just terrible. Only to find out that they're talking about the violence against the regime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's the nuance of how they frame the story where suddenly you realize, wait a minute, they're not actually talking about the victims here. They're not really telling the full story.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. BBC intentionally omitted the word Hamas from their reporting throughout the war. There was a conflict taking place in the Gaza Strip, many casualties, very sad story, terrible, terrible war. Who's carrying out the war? Well, let me tell you. There's an attack by IDF forces against the people of Gaza, another attack by the IDF forces against the people of Gaza, violent conflicts between the IDF forces and the people of Gaza, but no mention of the adversary called Hamas. Absolutely no mention.
More than that, Mati, the last remains of the hostage, Ran Gaveli, were returned to Israel. Yeah. Not returned. Yeah. Israeli forces had to go inside Gaza and dig up all the area and do forensic testing to remains until they found him themselves. And you know what? The international media, multiple media channels I saw.
Final hostage returned.
Returned by Hamas. Yeah. Hamas returns final hostage. Hamas knew this location for many months. We gave him the information on the location and they did nothing. So this is just
true evil playing game in this world.
And that's why people need to subscribe. To like and to share.
Yeah.
That's why.
I have less questions.
That's why Hamas sucks. Just so you know.
If you want those stickers, you can write us. And
that's Yair's way to say in a short way that we believe that their ideology is evil and that their actions are evil.
Exactly.
I have one last question about the war that's coming. How long it's going to take? It's going to be a one hit and that's it? Or we're going to be in this situation for
I think that's what the Gulf states and Israel and everybody do not want to be in. We don't want just a massive strike that takes place and then Trump is saying, it's over, we won, and then we are here to deal with all the last pieces. Like he stated that there is peace in the Middle East, that the Gaza conflict is over, but in practice, our forces are fighting there every single day against terrorists. So we hope that this will not happen in Iran. We don't want just to see a major attack of one day and that's it. The goal here is a regime change of the Ayatollah regime and something better for the Iranian people, something better for the neighbors, and something better for Israel and this entire Middle East.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's going to be the case, and I hope that that's why it takes longer to plan this assault, that people are thinking 1 month ahead, 2 months ahead, and not just what happens after we drop, 10 bombs that are costing $1 billion each.
Yeah, exactly. And again, this is sort of the theory behind why the attack has been postponed time and time again, which is Israel, the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, the Saudis. They said, look, if you're going to change the regime, do it right. A symbolic sort of flyover with launching some bombs, that's not going to change the regime. It's just going to embolden them. It's going to make them more galvanized in their resolve to hurt their own people and to fight against it. It has to be a significant strike. And if you're forcing them into a negotiation, it has to be strong enough. It's not a bluff if you bring everyone to this region. It has to be strong enough of a show of power so they know that there is no other alternative. That's how strong it needs to be. And that's where we are today, where everything is on the table. Israel's at the ready. The United States has an unbelievable amount of forces in this region. The Iranian regime has showed their intent towards their people, and now we wait to see who blinks first. That's really where we are today.
I'm not blinking.
Me too. Let's try.
So we have some guests from multiple places. Do you want to come up and speak? Did you prepare? I asked you yesterday if you prepared from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania. Not Transylvania. That's the vampire places. Yes, no, you don't have to. We have a microphone ready if you do want to come up. You need to come up here because we can't hear you. Meaning,
we the viewers can't hear you.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm originally from England, from Farnborough, Hampshire. And yesterday here on Sky News, we heard them talking with a Holocaust survivor. And he was talking about his position, where he was, what his family went through, how horrific it was. I don't think it was 6.5 million. I think there was a lot more people that were not identified that died in this Holocaust. And for me, it is terrible that the world is not paying attention and waking up. When you say Israel and the allies, I'd like to know who exactly are the allies, apart from America.
Rough question.
Which one would you like to say?
That's why
Does that relate to the Iranians?
Oh.
Or are you talking about rebuilding this region?
Both. Which one would you like?
I'll say both. When it comes to the Iranians, the main people doing the fighting right now is the Americans.
The Jordanians.
In a collaborative nature.
Yeah.
When it comes to rebuilding this region, when it comes to Gaza, to Lebanon, to Syria, the United States has been able to pull in a very significant amount of countries, European, quasi-European, Turkey, Arab countries, Muslim countries. But here, there's a catch to every one of these answers, which is that every one of these players has his own agenda, or hate, or fear, or both, or have an agenda that's underlying that might conflict with Israel's agenda.
Yeah.
Turkey's a great example of that. They really want to be part of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. They also, by chance, want to have armed soldiers on Israel's borders. And Israel looks at them and says, we've heard what you've been saying for the last several decades. We have a problem with that. So it's... Again, I think part of the masterful way that the Trump White House works is that they're able to pull in the crazies, the dramatic, the autocratic of the political world into an alliance. But that's also the downside of it. I mean, there is no good countries to work with. I mean, who are the good countries to work with right now? European countries who refuse to call Hamas a terrorist organization, who look at terrorist attacks on their own soil and aren't able to say why they happen. They can't say the words radicalizing or radical Islam. They're not able to voice those words. They can't say that they don't hate Israel. They can't deny the Holocaust. It's all intermixed. So it's working with the interest of very problematic countries in a very, very tense situation and trying to get the best out of it. And that's global politics every day of the week. That's what it is.
How many radicalized Muslims are there compared to normal?
I don't know how to answer that question. I think
hard to-
it's also it's super tricky to say. Radical Islam, it's sort of synonymous with the word. If you're a devout Muslim in Shia or Sunni country, part of that devotion on a political level has to do with a holy war. That also existed in the past in Christianity, if you really look at it honestly, a millennia back. So that's really part of it. Part of it is exactly that. And they've also made a pivot, and they say this publicly, when you follow not the political Islam, but the religious agenda behind it, they understood that they can influence international politics by the spread of religion. So now, is it just a religious movement, or is it a political movement that's trying to take hold in countries around the world and, usurp and manipulate their both financial system, their social welfare system, and their politics? It's all of them at the same time. There are good Muslims. There are many good Muslims. There are many Muslims that care about human life. But there are many governments, and the majority of governments that promote terrorism around the world, they follow a specific religion. I don't think that's a coincidence. That's just a reality.
Yeah, and there's also a difference between allies and countries that you have peace with. That doesn't mean exactly the same, because we have peace with Egypt, we have peace with Jordan, and the majority of Egyptians and Jordanians do not like Israel. They still think that they won the war against us, and we took something of theirs and we should return it. And this is the situation. And you can also do great things with countries that are not your allies behind the scenes, like what we tried to do with the Abraham Accords with Saudi Arabia, which does not have official relations with Israel, but you can still have behind-the-scenes relations. So it's basically all a matter of interests.
So peace and friendship doesn't quite go together.
Nah,
Oh,
it's
sorry.
just a treaty. Bottom line, yeah,
Okay,
doesn't
thank
go
you.
together. Thank you. We have concluded today's TBN Israel, the podcast. Thank you very much, Mati
That was very
Shoshani.
official. Yeah. Thus ends the ceremony.
Thank you very much, Tomer. Thank you to all of you joining us here in the studio. It's the best thing to speak to you in person. Way better than just through the screen. So if you want to come, join us. Make sure to leave a comment and let us know you're here in Jerusalem. We'd love to have you here. In the meantime, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground.
Thank you, Yair. Thank you, Tomer. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.